Does life actually get better? How do you come back/get better from being lonely and extremely depressed? How do you create meaningful relationships when you are so screwed up? You can't live a meaningful life in a day, but you can have a slightly better day at a time. Strive towards having a better day first. Start with one conversation, one relationship at a time. And give yourself time to grow and get results. Consistent effort is what it takes to be better. I don't know if life gets better or you get better. I've struggled with depression for most of my life. The thing is that my mental toils grow stronger with every other struggle I have to deal with. Summers used to make me extremely happy. Well, content is maybe a better word, because I could only be focused on work and making money. College was horrible because it took almost 6 years, and the only thing I envisioned my diploma to be was a giant question mark instead of a marker of success. I was tired, angry, and overwhelmed for those 6 years. I thought about killing myself a couple times because of all the strain. But I thought that if I killed myself, I wouldn't have known if I'd have finished school. But school was so difficult to complete. Your whole life you hear that a degree brings happiness and success. It doesn't, but school is done with. Do I have a career to show for it? A nice new car and a house? No, I have debt, but at the same time I'm carefree. So to answer your question, depression might not go away, but you will mature and things will get easier. But it's never truly gone. I'm late, so this will probably get buried. In 2008 I lost my job. All I could get right away was McDonald's, so I took it, but it wasn't enough to pay all my bills. My car was repossessed, I got kicked out of my apartment, and I found out my girlfriend was cheating on me, all within the space of a month or so. It was the lowest period of my life. I struggled with depression, considered suicide. It just wasn't a good time. I was homeless, but I had good friends who gave me a place to stay, so I was never actually on the streets. It took a while, but today I have a good job. I apprenticed in the tool and die trade, and I make good money for a guy who barely graduated high school and never went to college. I'm married, and my home life is stable. It's not perfect, life never is, but I'm far better than I was. I hope everyone in this thread who is struggling is able to find a way to better days as well. Obligatory edit. Wow, this blew up. By far my most upvoted comment, as well as gold and silver. I'm glad so many people found this inspiring. I saw some of these mentioned in other comments, but I'm just going to make a list. A previous employer chose to see my mental health and my work performance as two separate issues, which led to the worst panic attack I've ever experienced, and a case of burnout that I'm still wrestling with /3 years later. So a lot of these things come from what I had to fight through over those years. Counseling/therapy. Professionally is probably best, but you also have to shop around for a therapist you work well with, sometimes. Barring that, I'd try talking to a family member or very close friend, someone you know you can talk to anything about, even if it's just to vent. I live alone, but I have a dog, service dog in training. I've resorted to talking to her a few times, and even that has helped. Don't let yourself sit at home all day. I know full well I can only speak for myself, but I was always amazed at how the simple act of walking through the door suddenly lifted a huge weight off my chest, put a little spring in my step, and made it that much easier to just be more like my old self. Hang out with friends, keep devoting whatever time you can to your hobbies/interests, just go for a walk to clear your head. Even just a few minutes at a time is better than not at all. Take time to reflect. This has always been an invaluable tool for me. Again, I hope it's just as useful for you, and as I've recovered from various bouts of anxiety, depression, and whatever else I've dealt with over the years, the insight I seem to gain as I improve has helped me learn more from these experiences than I would have if I had just said, "Oh good, I'm on the road to recovery," and pushed the bad stuff out of my head on the spot. Try to find things in your life you have full control over. Are they good things? Awesome. Keep them that way, or make them even more awesome if you can. Are they not so good things? Do what you can to mitigate the bad and make them better, or just get rid of them if there isn't another option. I can't think of anything else at the moment, and I truly wish I could. I was also in a horribly toxic relationship for most of the last 3 years, and I feel like everything else I'm coming up with is too specific to just that circumstance and all the insanity that goes with it. Or specific to other things I'm trying to deal with that I brought upon myself when things were at their worst for me. But know that you're not alone in dealing with this stuff, as cliche as that line is. Please feel free to drop me a DM if you want/need someone to talk to, or even just to listen. Edit. Welp, this blew up when I wasn't looking. Thank you everyone who left comments. I figured it would be easier if I just made an edit to touch on a few key things. What I shared are things that have helped me over the years. I do not expect them all to work just as well for others as they do for me. I'm painfully aware of how drastically the effectiveness of any one thing can vary from person to person. Even if my suggestions don't work for someone else, maybe they can at least lead others to a similar trick or habit that does work for them. In most cases, a therapist is supposed to be a professional you go to for help. Yes. I was not trying to insinuate otherwise when I also suggested family or close friends. I have been incredibly lucky to have a lot of friends that made the effort to reach out to me periodically, make sure I was still surviving however I had to, and remind me that I can always talk to them about whatever, whether it's to vent or seek additional opinions. I've been even luckier that the therapist I've been working with for several years now actually is something like a friend, as well. After all the therapists I've worked with in my life that didn't help at all, or made things worse, I count my lucky stars, and I hope that others can find someone like that as well. The previous employer thing, this is a bit of a long story. In my mind, it's only the first chapter of the story, because from that point up until now I've just been endlessly trying to get back on my feet, and I've only started actually holding onto the progress I make within the last couple of months or so. But basically, I started having a harder and harder time keeping up with work and an increasing number of things going on outside of work. I thought I'd be able to get back on track again right around the first time my boss expressed concern for my performance at work, and within a week my father called me while I was at work to basically say, "Hey, I might have cancer, I'll keep you posted, love you, bye," and leave me with nothing else to go on for the better part of a month. Next chance I got, I told my boss about what had happened, only to have him respond with, "Yeah, I'm still concerned about your performance." So I went to HR and told them about the mental health issues that had come back after over a decade. I told my boss the same thing, so everyone knew what was going on and everything I was doing to get back on track again. 2 weeks later, I had an annual performance review. I knew it wasn't going to be good, but I figured they'd at least cut me some slack given everything else. I was hit with the PIP, Performance Improvement Plan, which gave me 30 days to get myself up to where they wanted me to be. They could fire me at any point in that 30-day window if they thought I wasn't gonna reach that level of performance, and even if I did, there was another provision that said if my performance started waning again they could still fire me on the spot without another warning because of the PIP on my record. That was when I asked about the mental health conversation and they made the two separate issues argument. Their head of HR even claimed that that was true under the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, which my doctors all scratched their heads at because by their understanding the opposite was true. I went back to my desk, and for a half hour I just sat there, staring at my monitors. I don't even remember any other symptoms of a panic attack, racing heart, pounding heartbeat, etc., because I was too distracted by how I could only see colors. I couldn't even make out shapes, just blobs of color that were all blending together. It still scares me to this day when I think about it and what it was like. I think that a case of burnout started then, if it hadn't in the weeks leading up to that, made the anxiety and depression that much harder to cope with, because writing code, what I had loved to do for work and for fun, now made me physically lock up every time I tried to do it. And now I know I need to be done with this edit. My doggo just hopped up into my lap and got comfy in a way that made it a bit harder to type. Yes, she will get a treat for doing this. 3. Edit 2, I earned my first ever Reddit gold. Thank you very much, kind internet stranger. Edit 3, and thank you for the silver, friendly internet spirit of kindness. Everything in life is temporary. Good times, bad times. All temporary. But if you were happy you would never think to yourself, wow, this happiness is gonna last forever and will never change. When depressed we have a tendency to think nothing will ever change. But this is the source of the depression. You need to abandon the narratives you've created for yourself. You aren't some weirdo who is screwed up. Most people in your situation would likely become depressed. Hence why it's endemic and suicide is the biggest killer of young men. You are just a normal person. You're not the problem. It's our sick shitty world. You're just reacting appropriately to it. It will changed for me when I started to view my depression and anxiety as non-narratively. They weren't a sign of weakness or failure. It was an underlying functional problem with my biology and thinking. It wasn't anything to be ashamed about. Indeed, it's not an emotion-inducing event. Depression, like all disease, is morally neutral. Risk factors of depression aren't things like bad personality or boring or dumb. Risk factors for depression are things like lack of physical activity, poor diet, genetics. None are statements about you as a person. It took years, but slowly I changed how I thought. I did some great cognitive behavioral therapy. I started to become aware of the thoughts that went through my head, and aware of how those thoughts would trigger negative emotion. By simply observing and discarding those thoughts I can stop tormenting myself. The biggest thing you can do, is be kind to yourself. Give yourself a break. You're going through a really tough time. My rule when self-talking is never say anything to myself I wouldn't say to a friend. I am a friend to myself. I take care of myself. I don't tell myself I'm pathetic for this or that anymore. Another thing I really remember my therapist saying, act, don't feel. If you wait until you feel like going out to a coffee shop, you will never go. The act of going is what will make you feel better. Lack of activity is strongly linked to depression. It's why anxiety often leads to depression. Your brain wants to act, but you are too afraid. So you do nothing. And that act of thinking about doing something and then not doing it, sends bad signals. Humans want to be free and have agency. It's a long road, but you need to learn to love yourself. You're worth it. We all are. We're not weak because of this shit. And one day this rough patch in life will become your armor. Every time life gets rough I remind myself it's a cakewalk compared to the shit I've been through. Literally nothing can hurt me anymore really. Go to therapy/counseling. The other suggestions are great but I don't think these people understand what it's like to go through depression. You don't merely snap out of it by doing the things they suggested. Find a good therapist, and if you cannot afford one, look for support groups of others who are also experiencing depression and talk about your struggles with them. Mental health counseling, along with the things the others have mentioned, will go a long way. It's been said before on here, but it's always worth finding someone awesome in your life and sticking with them. Doesn't have to be a partner or family member. It can be a dog, or a Twitch chat community. Find somewhere you belong and fit in, whether it's with one person or many. Relationships happen because you have a life to share. So don't go looking for it. Build a life for yourself first. Self-improvement. Exercise, nutrition. Get a plant or pet and bond with it so you have some form of responsibility and a reason to become more disciplined. Once you've sorted out the basics, find what would make you happy or proud of yourself and actively chase down that dream. Sometimes it helps to remember that you could put yourself in an absolute hell if you let things deteriorate. So spend a bit of time contemplating how easily things could get way worse if you did nothing. Just don't ever forget, you have something to contribute to life. Even if others cannot or do not appreciate what you are doing. Every small step helps. Give it time. As a last piece of advice, do a year of yes. If someone asks you to do something and you cannot immediately think of a proper argument to say no, say yes and go do it. I've been living with severe clinical depression, I could claim disability if I needed to, for almost 30 years now, 2 more and I can celebrate my first clinical diagnosis. Therapy and medication. Sure, exercise and eating healthy help, but they don't help like people who were once sad and then went outside think they do. They can take you from a 2 to 2.5. They can't heal you. Therapy and medication is where you'll get your help. You need to learn how to think and also get the right meds to fix your brain chemistry. Medications are also not an exact science. Some may work in the short term, others may not seem to help at all until one day they do. Keep an open line of communication with your mental health provider as they may need to adjust dosage. Think of yourself like a car. A car needs oil, gas, brake fluid, transmission fluid, coolant, good tires, etc. Your body needs 26 vitamins and minerals to 100% of your daily value, ample protein, and essential fatty acids plus fiber. It needs daily exercise to rebuild and maintain itself. It needs to be in a good environment to keep in condition. Can a car drive when all its fluids are half level? Yes, but it will struggle, overheat, break down faster, etc. Likewise, you can survive with half of your needs, but you will struggle and break down faster than you should. Once you satisfy the basics, then you can focus harder on improving your financial and social situations. There's a reason people usually don't befriend bums on the corner. It's because they tend to weight us down with their problems. I have problems too. I can't take on the problems of a stranger. People won't want to befriend/date you if you can't manage your problems. It starts with yourself first. Self-talk, CBT, diet/nutrition/exercise/health. Health before wealth, all forms of wealth. I call this the whirlwind approach. You start with what's closest to you and move outwards. In this case, you start with what's in you. You are nothing but a collection of nutrition, protein, fat, minerals and vitamins bind you together. Exercise builds you and keeps you glued together. Your thoughts control everything you do and your version of reality, CBT, your self-talk is everything. Medication can be useful. I consider it as a band-aid or crutch. These are good things, they help you heal. Some people need more than a band-aid or a crutch. Medication will not cure you, but it can help you. You need to take action. Whether you think you can, or you think you can't, you're right, in 95% of cases. And #X200B. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. Einstein. I'll tell you about myself and you are free to draw your conclusions. I have major childhood trauma, verbal and emotionally abusive parents. Mainly father. Things went south even before I was born. Mom had anxiety when she was pregnant with me. Parents got divorced, money was sparse, health got shit. Got depressed, very anxious, and struggled like a pig. Then I started working. I saved money. And here's the most important thing you need to do, I got a good therapist and worked on myself like crazy. It was exhausting and overwhelming. I worked on myself, my relationships, my habits, my very personality. It is so important to get a good therapist. They may be expensive, this one was, but she was the best thing I've done for myself. And since then, the anxiety is down. My relationships are so much better. I'm better. But all the trauma and shit show of 25 years doesn't go away in 15 therapy sessions. But I'm much better equipped to deal with things now. We are still not rich, we still struggle. But we have finally arrested the decline. You will too. Feel free to DM me if you need anything. This is a bitch of a question to answer and I really wish there was a simple solution, but the reality is that everyone's mental issues are subtly different. Mental illness don't group as nicely as physical illness. My wife and her sister both suffer from generalized anxiety disorder, but one has a bit more OCD rolled in and the other has a bit more depression. What works for one person's depression might not work for you. Depression. Main things you need to know and keep telling yourself. It is not your fault, it is not a weakness in your personality, you are not screwed up. You have a medical condition that negatively affects your brain. It is simply that we do not understand enough about how the brain works to be able to say exactly what is wrong. It will go and it will come back, but you can change this pattern. You can make improvements. Some days are better than others. I have good days and bad days and a lot of mixed day. It's a struggle, but like riding a bike, it takes time and you fall down. Finding friends in today's society can be really hard. That said, start in places where talking with others is encouraged. Creating meaningful relationships is a two-way street, but in general it's a lot of stumbling around getting to know each other and find your comfort zone. I agree with a lot of the previously stated advice. If your loneliness and depression are connected, I agree that therapy or counseling would be a good move. In addition to that, you can also reframe your alone time. Not all activities have to be done socially. I don't have a lot of friends and never have. One of the things that I really enjoy is going camping or backpacking. It feels really good to be out in nature in a place where being alone isn't a bad thing. I garden. It felt really good to pick and eat a blackberry from a plant that I'd taken care of since it was a tiny little seedling. I also just respond to a lot of things on Reddit. Unless your name is your screen name, no one knows who you and never will. There's a subreddit for pretty much everything, so much so that I sometime make a joke of it and type in reddit.com/r/left insert random 2 to 3 word phrase, and more than likely it'll pop up as an existing Reddit. You can connect with people who don't know who you are, don't care, and still accept you. Think of some books or TV shows that you like, find a subreddit for them, and comment away. I heard once that people are only normal until you get to know them, and Reddit's a great place to find fellow weirdos. It's also nice to spoil yourself once in a while. I do this from time to time with cooking when my wife is out of town, because I'm a little more adventurous an eater and cook than she is. Made coq au vin from scratch, I bought the chicken from the store, I didn't raise it from an egg and slaughter it myself. Took me like 3 hours to prep and cook from beginning to end, but it tasted badass and I'm worth spending 3 hours on. I have 3 dogs and will stop and say hit to every other dog I meet. Always been more of a dog person than a people person anyway. But it's really comforting how a dog that doesn't know a thing about me will still wag his tail if I come up to say hi. Dogs are simple and awesome that way. I'm posting comment number 96 on this thread, so keep in mind that you're not really alone. I've been seeing the same therapist since I was 19. I'm now 36. My case will be different from yours, but I figure I should share that different stages of life will make you think about different things, and leave you wanting to reason out if you can handle the challenges life throws at you. I've never been extremely depressed, but I have had suicidal thoughts, or at the very least felt like my life wasn't worth it. It's taken this long for me to realize that, even if I have those feelings, there's nothing stopping me from rejecting them and forging a path for myself with other things. To be fair, I still don't know if life actually gets better. In some ways I think it will, or in my case it has, but in some ways, it may not. I just want to get past my days well enough to see the following day through and find happiness where I can. And #X200B. Also, it took some time to get me on the right meds for me to stop overthinking about everything. My first meds made me drowsy all the time, but then we just made adjustments. So, from once a week sessions 17 years ago, I basically visit my therapist now every 2 or 3 months for life coaching or as needed if there's some major stressor, and ask for advice to help me broaden my worldview. And #X200B. That said, if you ever feel the need to talk or want someone to rant to, I can always offer some kind words. And #X200B. Cheers. /__. You find yourself someone or something that makes you happy. I can be a partner or a simple pet. Maybe a leopard gecko or a cat. Everything that lives longer than 10 years might not be that bad. Find someone to talk to or hang out. He/she doesn't need to be a relationship, just someone who is open and can listen to you and that you trust. For me, that would be my gaming buddies I met while playing, laughing face. But if you are alone and very shy, I recommend maybe a pet. Leopard geckos are cheap and low maintenance. Of course there are a lot others, but a pet that you can take in your hand, pet, and talk to works wonders and will build confidence. Important is that you aren't alone. For me at least, loneliness is the worst thing because my depression starts really kicking through then. Maybe this helped. Maybe not. It's just what I did and it helps a lot. Laughing face. To quote a great fictional man, sometimes life is like this tunnel. You can't always see the light at the end of the tunnel, but if you keep moving, you will come to a better place. Iro. A month ago I didn't think anything was worth it anymore. I remembered this quote and kept moving forward. It took time, a long time, but I'm finally leaving the job I hate for a job that I'm actually excited about. Change won't happen overnight, but you have to keep showing up the next day to make progress. Don't be afraid of change and you'll be fine.